God of War is one of Sony's biggest franchises. It was released on every PlayStation platform aside from the first console. It's a series that has been at the center of some controversy over the years. With a new entry coming out soon, we want to take a look at what makes this series great. Here are 10 things that will make you love the God of War series.
Your only hope is to find the Sisters of Fate and travel back through time to the moment Zeus betrayed you, for only then will he truly be vulnerable.
Greek mythology is pretty awesome, and God of War is full of it. We wouldn't say it can replace your history teacher, as most characters are portrayed differently from their historical and mythical counterparts. But it's cool nonetheless to have a game that's so rooted in ancient history. You're fighting myths, half-gods, and the gods from Mount Olympus themselves. That's pretty sweet.
The death of Olympus means the death of us all.
Then prepare for your death, Poseidon.
And with God of War on the PS4, Kratos is going to add Norse mythology to his resume. Odin, Thor, Loki, and Freya, you have been warned.
Here's your chance. Show me already.
Yes, sir!
Now there is no hope.
And Kratos cast himself from the highest mountain in all of Greece.
In the God of War series, you play as Kratos, a Spartan warrior who seeks vengeance because Ares made him kill his family. Eventually, this raging bull will become the God of War himself and will turn out to be a demigod, which will give him more reasons to be angry and start defeating more gods. In essence, you're a one-man army driven by anger. The cool thing about these God of War games is that you're always fighting things that are way bigger than you are. Sometimes you're hacking and slashing through hordes of minions, and at other moments you're battling gods or slaying gigantic titans. That's something that makes God of War really stand out as a series, as you always beat the odds. God of War prides itself in its combat. The game is best described as a hack-and-slash action game, as it generally doesn't really matter how and where you hit your enemies. Alongside the hacking and slashing, the game throws in some special moves that can be activated with a QuickTime event. Based on the enemy, Kratos will perform a certain execution. This can also result in interactive cutscenes where you're really destroying your enemy in the most brutal way possible. However, the developers are completely revamping the combat system in the new game.
Hello, brother. This is not between us, Hercules.
Isn't it? You were always Zeus's favorite.
If you follow our channel, you know we like boss battles. The God of War series offered some of the most memorable bosses in gaming. This doesn't mean these fights are super difficult, but they sure are epic. Who remembers the way the fight against Hercules ended in God of War 3? Or what about the multi-staged boss fight against Zeus in the same game? Ares as the final boss in the first God of War? Or the large-scale fight against the Titan Kronos? All these fights scream epicness, and they are exactly what makes God of War special. You'd almost think that God of War is only about killing bad guys in the most brutal way possible. Interestingly enough, it also has some other game mechanics. For example, you can level up your weapons. The levels are also filled with puzzles and platforming sections. These provide a welcome change of pace. The platforming generally isn't very deep, but the puzzles can be quite complex, involving switches and boxes you need to move around. After you've upgraded your weapon, do 1 or 2 puzzles, the fighting will begin again, don't worry. With all the brutality that is such a big part of this franchise, you shouldn't be surprised about the mature ratings these games get. But violence isn't the only reason for the M for mature rating. Quick-time events are not just used in combat, but also for a bit of cheeky gameplay. In the first God of War, you did it on a ship, in the second, in a hot tub, while the third game had you sharing a bed with the goddess of love herself. Whether this is a plus or not is up to personal preference. Seeing the latest developments in the gaming industry, we kinda expect the new God of War to lack these explicit scenes.
Who you were before doesn't matter. This boy is not your past, he is your son. And he needs his father.
The God of War series started on the PS2 with the first 2 games, followed by Chains of Olympus on the PSP. This handheld game was a prequel to the series and was later remastered for the PS3. The same goes for Ghost of Sparta, which bridged the gap between God of War and God of War 2. The PS3 release God of War 3 is basically the final game in the Greek mythology timeline, while God of War Ascension is a prequel that takes place even before the events of Chains of Olympus. By now, Kratos has basically wiped out the entire Greek mythology. No wonder that Santa Monica Studios is looking at Norse gods to feed his hunger.
What is it saying?
The first God of War was a true showcase for the PlayStation 2. The second game was even more amazing, blowing every PlayStation fan away. God of War 3 on the PS3 was also a great success, but then came the prequel God of War Ascension.
A leftovers never won from manners.
It didn't do that well commercially, and critically, the game received an 8.1 out of 10 on average, making it the worst scoring new game in the franchise's history. The series was past its prime.
Never.
Then let death be your reality!
I am hungry.
The developers at Santa Monica Studios also felt like Kratos could use a makeover. The new God of War is about Norse mythology, and Kratos now has a beard and a son. The camera is much closer to the action, and Kratos won't be jumping like he did in the previous God of War games. He'll be throwing and calling back his axe, dodging incoming attacks, and performing environmental kills. You get to level up Kratos' weapons as well as his son's, and this time there won't be any red orbs but an XP system instead. And yes, Kratos still has his Spartan rage to destroy opponents.
That was something, that fight.
The new God of War will provide over 30 hours of playtime. The game offers lots of side quests that complement the main storyline. Regardless of how much time God of War's side content tacks onto the total playtime, it will definitely be the longest game in the series to date. We really can't wait to get our hands on this huge game. Obviously, there's a whole lot more to discover in the new God of War, but we'll leave that for our next video. And let's face it, the new game in this epic series is really looking gorgeous, right?
The road ahead is long and unforgiving. No place for a boy.
What's your favorite God of War game? Let us know in the comments, and be sure to follow us on social media, like the video, and subscribe to the channel.
I bring destruction of Olympus!